Hello everybody, Robert Carr from Intuitive Healing. Another video for you to watch. This is not an educational video as such. This is more of a story that I have been involved with. It's a story of a lost soul, hauntings, passengers. Kind of puts it all into perspective, and I was part of it. So it's nothing educational. It's more of information and an interesting little story that perhaps gives you an idea what can go on, and how healing can kind of help, that sort of thing. So I'll just tell it. I've got lots of notes, because this needs to be done properly. That's why I've got my glasses on straight away. This needs to be done properly, it needs to be done well, and it needs to be done in the right order. So bear with us and we'll just begin. And this is the story of Alice, the true tale of a lost soul, Alice. This begins a long time ago. This begins 32 years ago, on my wife's side of the family. We only met 26 years ago, but this story begins 32 years ago. Both of our families are quite spiritual. There's a lot of gifted people in both sides of our family, and for a laugh and devilment, for some stupid reason, her mum, her auntie, another auntie decided they were going to play with a Ouija board. And my now sister-in-law Margaret, who was pregnant with my niece Curry at the time, went, "I'm not playing, you're all stupid," and she went upstairs out the way. So they started playing with this Ouija board, and bearing in mind it's a gifted family, lots of energies, so they attracted an energy towards them. They knew it was getting naughty because lights were flickering and things were getting pushed off the table. Like I said in an earlier video, sometimes when a soul is desperate, it will try and attract your attention in many, many different ways. And they had attracted a desperate soul, shall we say. The husband came home, opened the door, shouted at them, "What do you think you're doing?" Board was finished. But when you attract something towards you, with a total of lights of lots of people, and then those lights fragment, you can't get rid of that. If you're going to play with a Ouija board, you've got to know what you're doing. I don't know how a Ouija board works. I choose not to because I think it's stupid. But if you're going to play, if you're going to dabble with something as heavy duty as that, you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to know how to set it up properly. You've got to know how to start, and you've got to know how to end it without attracting something to you and attracting something to either an individual or a family. This didn't happen in that case, and they attracted a lost soul called Alice, and she hung around the family for years, and it kind of came to a head when my niece Curry was 17. So 17 years later, it really got a grip. Another niece of mine, Lindsay, she was going through a bad time, and she said to Curry she felt like she was being haunted by somebody, and she described this figure. So my little mystical wing woman Curry went over and stared at Lindsay's, and she said she got a picture of somebody standing at the bottom of our bed with mousy hair, dark eyes, dark circles around her eyes. And she was standing with her head bowed, with her arms straight, with blood gushing from her wrists. And when she shut her eyes, she could still see her. When she opened her eyes, she was there. Shut her eyes, she could still see her. And she says her head was filled with suicidal thoughts. This is weird because this desperate soul, Alice, was trying to put on somebody that they should commit suicide. And it's not because she was so lost. she was looking for help, and her attitude was, if you kill yourself, then I can go over with you because I'm stuck. So it was a plea for help, but it was a very, very desperate way of doing it. So as per usual, I get a phone call, Uncle Bob, weird things are happening. So hops in my car, drives over. And I just got this feeling of a young lady from the Beamish area. And I tried to help her over. I was trying to converse with her, come to terms with it, call it what you like. But she just wouldn't. She just didn't like me. Just took a instant dislike to us. And I didn't know why. I thought, I'm there to try and help you, but she didn't want to be helped. Not from a man. And this will come out better as the story goes on. She only ever used to attach herself to female members of the family. She used to haunt my niece, Kerry, and she'd end up with sleep deprivation, which meant her energies were dropping, which meant Alice could feed on her. Not nice. This lost soul, Alice, was, I would say, had educational difficulties. So when you were trying to talk to her and trying to convince her to do this, that, the other, whatever, she just couldn't comprehend what was going on. And while she was alive, when she was at church or when she was being looked after, she couldn't say the Lord's Prayer. She couldn't, no matter how many times she tried, and she used to get punished for it. She used to get rapped with a ruler. And when she was around, it was very, very difficult for anybody in the room to say the Lord's Prayer because her energy was so strong. But she was kind of imposing herself on us. Mad, I know, right? Page 2, there with us. To say her energy came across as her having a very sad life was an understatement. A very, very sad life. A child died while they were in her care. She got pregnant at a very, very young age. She performed a termination on herself when she was in about 13-year-old. Not nice. She hung around our Kerry for about 3 or 4 years, in and out. And the more we were dealing with that, and the more we realised that my niece Kerry was a psychic, the more I kind of taught her, brought her on. She's the only pupil I've ever had. And after 3 or 4 years of lessons and energies and things like that, it kind of, I think she was too strong and too big for this lost soul to impose themselves on her. So it kind of fizzled out, and she used to come and go. She was easily identified because you'd get a phone call off our Kerry and she'd just say, Alice is back. And you just thought, oh no, help. Because you knew it was going to be naughty. But a scariness kind of wore off. Our initial presence of, she still showed up with the same look, the dark eyes, the mousy hair, the head bowed and the blood dripping from her wrists. But our presence wasn't as scary. Our suicidal thoughts weren't imposed on people trying to make them commit suicide. So she had somebody to go over that she was kind of mellowing out, if that's such a thing. So she started accepting my presence, which was nice. So she started, she didn't like men. You just knew she didn't like men, but she was starting to kind of come around to the fact that she quite liked me, which was nice, reassuring, because it didn't mean her any harm. All I wanted to do was help her. But it was still ongoing. and she used to hang around with all the females of the family, but only when the females were going through a bad spell. So she kind of just done a circuit. All the females got a bit. And was she hanging around in an attempt to help them because they're going through a bad spell? And she thought she was supporting them in that problem they were going through? Or was she just being so vulture, acting like a vulture and taking the opportunity, or they're not well, and feeding off them? We're not quite sure. It's the same effect. Whether they've got good intentions or bad intentions. Passengers, it has the same effect. Then she started hanging around with our Kerry's friend called Vicky. Nice lady. Who turned out to be a bit of a psychic as well. So me, the psychic, Hayla, our Kerry, the psychic, Hayla, and then Vicky, the psychic. Vicky was going through a bad patch, so Alice decided she wanted to move in with her. And one day, me and our Kerry were just sitting in the house doing our usual uncle and niece malarkey, drinking coffee and being mystical, and she just looked us in the eye and she went, "Soulsby." I went, "What?" She went, "Soulsby." I went, "I didn't know anybody called Soulsby. There was a fireman I know from Hebburn." I says, "That's the only Soulsby I know." She went, "I'm just getting the name Soulsby popping into my head." And she says, "I'm just throwing it out there. It'll become apparent eventually." So there you go, Soulsby. So anyway, one day Vicky rings up and she says, "What you doing?" I went, "Not a lot." Why? She says, "Oh, me and our Kerry are coming over. We need to go for a road trip." I went, "Where?" She went, "Beamish." I was like, "Right. We need to go to church at Beamish." I went, "You realise Beamish is a museum and these churches have been took brick by brick and somewhere, so if you're going to church at Beamish, it's not the same." She went, No. We just need to head towards Beamish. There's a church." I went, "Right, fair enough." She went, "Any particular reason why?" She went, just weird urge. So, mystical road trip. We all hopped in Vicky's car and she starts to drive towards Beamish. And we were bimble along, and then she just pointed to a church spire and went, "That one." Fair enough. So we made our way and we got out of the car. Ooh, I'm getting sizzles down my back now. We got out of the car just outside of this churchyard. And the two lasses were absolutely bricking it, and they had to have a cigarette to calm them down. And I was just thinking, this is just mad, this is just mad. What we're going to do? So we stepped into the churchyard. As soon as we stepped into the churchyard, the three of us were just covered in goosebumps from head to toe. Now, when I'm speaking a spiritual truth, or something's really, really genuinely true or honest, I get goosebumps. And I've got them now telling this story, and it's like, oh, it's very weird. So we went into this churchyard, and I just looked up. I went, I'm drawn to the hole in that hedge over there. So we start walking to the hole in the hedge. And Vicky says, "I'm drawn to a grave over here." And our Kerry says, "I'm drawn to this grave here." So waltzes up. And we looks on the grave, and at the bottom it said, Alice Soulsby and Eleanor Soulsby. And you could have cut the air with a knife. Alice Soulsby. Who died at the age of 17 by taking her own life. And her little sister Eleanor Soulsby, who died at the age of 10. I don't know what actually went on with these children, but they were taken in by the church, so they must have been lost their parents or whatever, but the church took them in. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. Page 3. The vicar that took them in, let's just say he wasn't a very nice person, and he used to abuse them, basically. Assault them, not in a nice way. And I think one of the reasons he took them on board was because of Alice's educational difficulties. And he thought he could get away with it, do what he wanted, because if she went to tell somebody what he was doing, they wouldn't believe her, because she was backward and she was thick. And he kind of held this over her. And he used to abuse them both. So Eleanor, at the age of 10, had enough. So she drowned herself. And that meant Alice had all his attention, all his affections, shall we say. And it broke her. Absolutely broke her. She was the sole recipient of the vicar's advances. There's a lot of people who wear uniforms and aren't particularly nice people. I'm not having to go to the church, but this is the case with Alice. This was too much for her. So she took her own life. She thought, I've got nowhere to go here. Nobody's believing us. And she took her own life. So the image she was shown herself to was the last image she saw of herself in a mirror, looking at herself while she bled to death. And it was a thing that was like, look what I've had to do, look what it's come to. I've had to end my own life because it's that bad. And it was a very, very, very scary cry for help when she came into the family as such. When we went in, and I was drawn to the hole in the hedge, and our Kerry was drawn to this particular cross with a little thing at the bottom. Our mate Vicky was drawn to a grave across the way. So I went to the grave, and it was the grave of the vicar, bless him. And he'd been in that parish for 30 years. 30 years of good service, you reckon. And she just needed to tell her story. She just wanted us to go there. She needed somebody to hear her tale. She needed to vent and to let people know what happened to her and her sister. And we were communicating. I was like, well, why didn't you just go over? When you died, why didn't you just go over? And she says she decided to stay and haunt that vicar every night for the rest of his existence. And she became very good at it. And I can't imagine that bloke ever having a decent night's sleep for the rest of his life. Oh dear, how sad, never mind. When the story was told and we'd voiced her tale as such out loud, she was quite happy to go over, and she left. She still visits now. I can feel her presence now because I'm tingling. She still visits now, but she comes from a perspective of being nice. Sometimes when we need help to resolve a situation, either in a haunting or a lost soul somewhere, Alice may just turn up and give us a hand, which is lovely. Because she was a very lost soul, she was a very tortured soul. And it took over 30 years to resolve it. 30 years to resolve this whole thing. Very, very interesting. And it could have been a negative outcome. As it was a positive outcome. We helped her. But she wasn't bothered. A negative outcome and putting the thoughts of suicide in the mind of somebody so that they would commit suicide so she could go with them because she was lost. She wasn't bothered. A positive or a negative outcome. She just needed an outcome. As it was a positive one. Thank the Lord. But she was trapped on this material plane for 90 years, and she hung around Maxine's side of the family for 30. Very, very strange. So that's just a tale of a lost soul, a haunting a passenger. You can draw them to you. Don't mess with things you do not understand, because sometimes they can come and bite you, and they can bite you properly, and they can hang around. That's it. I suppose it is educational, but it's more of a very interesting ghost story or a lost soul story. I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed it, because it's nothing to enjoy. It's just, it is what it is, and whether you agree with it or not, it happened. We'll do another one next week. Catch you later.